The letter arrived on a gray morning, carried by a rider in fine livery who did not bother to dismount. Elira Ashworth watched from the upstairs window as her father broke the seal with trembling hands, and she knew, before a single word was spoken aloud, that something in her life had just been decided without her. "The Duke of Thornwick has agreed," her father said that evening, not looking up from his plate. "He will settle our debts, all of them. In exchange, you will marry him within the month." Elira set down her spoon. "You arranged this without telling me." "There was nothing to tell until it was certain," her mother said gently, though her eyes did not meet Elira's. "Elira, you must understand, without this, we lose the house. We lose everything. Your sisters would have no dowries, no future. This is not cruelty. This is survival." "This is selling me," Elira said quietly. No one answered. The silence was answer enough. She was 22 years old, the second daughter of a baron, whose title had long outlived his fortune. She had grown up with tutors and fine dresses, and the quiet expectation that she would marry well. But she had never imagined marrying like this, negotiated like livestock, priced like a debt settled. She thought of the Duke of Thornwick only as a name she had heard at a distance, a man of the northern court, widowed young, known for being cold and unreachable. She had never seen his face. She did not know if he was cruel or kind, old or young, patient or short-tempered. All she knew was that his gold would save her family, and that her answer had never actually been required. She packed her things in silence over the following days. Her younger sister cried and begged her not to go, and Elira held her and said nothing, because there was nothing true she could say that would not frighten her further. On the morning she left, her father could not look at her. Her mother pressed a small locket into her hand and whispered that she hoped, someday, Elira could forgive them. Elira did not answer that either. The carriage ride to Thornwick took 4 days. She spent them watching the countryside change from the gentle hills of her childhood to steeper, colder land, thick with pine forests and stone villages. She rehearsed, over and over, the version of herself she would need to become: composed, unreadable, useful. A wife who caused no trouble. She did not allow herself to imagine anything beyond that. The estate at Thornwick was larger and grander than anything she had ever seen. Stone towers rose against a heavy sky, and servants moved along the corridors with the practiced silence of people used to a demanding household. She was led not to a welcoming chamber, but to a small receiving room, and told to wait. She sat with her hands folded in her lap for nearly an hour, growing more certain with each passing minute that she had been brought here simply to be inspected, like a piece of furniture delivered to complete a room. When the door finally opened, she rose out of habit and found herself facing a tall man with dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. This, she understood immediately, was the Duke. He did not smile. He did not offer any of the pleasantries she had braced herself for. "You are Lady Ashworth," he said. It was not quite a question. "I am," she answered, keeping her voice steady. He studied her a moment longer, and something crossed his face that she could not name. Not warmth, but not quite coldness either. Something closer to discomfort. "I was told the arrangement was made through my steward," he said, "without my direct involvement in the terms. I would not know the details, Your Grace, only that a sum was agreed upon, and I was sent here as part of it." He was quiet for a long moment, then he said, in a low voice, "That was not how I intended this to be handled." She did not understand what he meant, and she did not ask. She had learned, in the 4 days of travel, not to expect explanations from anyone. He left the room shortly after, offering only that she would be shown to her chambers, and that they would speak again soon. Elira spent that first night in an unfamiliar bed, in an unfamiliar house, staring at a ceiling she did not know, wondering what kind of man she had been given to. The answer came 2 days later, in the form of another rider from the estate, sent this time, not to her father's house, but directly to her, carrying a letter with the Duke's own seal. Inside was a note, brief and formal, informing her that a second payment had been sent to her family, separate from the marriage settlement, and larger than the first. The note explained nothing further, only that it was compensation, and that it came with no further obligation attached to her. She sought him out that same afternoon, finding him in a long gallery lined with portraits of solemn ancestors. He seemed almost startled that she had come looking for him. "You sent more money to my family," she said. "Why?" He did not answer immediately. He looked, for a moment, like a man choosing his words carefully, the way one might choose a path across uncertain ground. "Because the arrangement, as it was made, was wrong," he said finally. "You were spoken of as though you were a debt to be collected, not a person entering a marriage. I did not authorize that manner of dealing, and by the time I learned of it, it was already done. I could not undo the arrangement without ruining your family entirely, which I understood was never your wish. So I did what I could. I paid again, so that you would understand you owe me nothing beyond what any wife owes a husband she chooses to keep. If you wish to leave, you may. The gold already sent will not be recalled." Alira stared at him, uncertain she had heard him correctly. "You are telling me I am free to go." "I am telling you that you were never meant to be bought," he said. "I would rather you stayed because you chose to, than because you felt you had no other option." It was, she realized later, the first time in the entire arrangement that anyone had spoken to her as though her choice mattered at all. She did not leave, she told herself, in the days that followed, that it was practicality. The road home led only back to the same debts, the same desperation, and now, an even larger sum owed to a man she barely understood. But some quieter part of her admitted, it was curiosity too. She wanted to understand a man who paid twice for a bride, and then told her she did not have to stay. The weeks that followed were unlike anything she had expected. Duke Alaric Thornwick was not warm in any obvious way. He rarely smiled, and his household ran with a discipline that bordered on severity. But she began to notice things. He remembered, without being told twice, that she preferred her tea without sugar. He had a chair moved into the library nearest the window, where the light was best for reading, without ever mentioning that he had done it for her. When she mentioned once, in passing, that she missed the sound of a particular bird from her childhood home, she found, weeks later, that he had ordered several trees planted along the eastern wall, the kind that Bird favored. He never spoke of these things directly. She had to notice them herself, piece them together like a puzzle whose picture only slowly revealed itself, and when she did ask him about it, he would simply look faintly embarrassed and change the subject, as though being caught in a kindness troubled him more than being caught in anything else. It was one of the older servants, a woman named Greta, who had served the household for decades, who finally told her the truth she suspected. "He was not always like this," Greta said one evening, as they folded linens together. "Before his first wife died, he laughed, he danced, he was nearly a different man. When she passed, something in him closed like a door. He has not let anyone close since, until now it seems." Alira did not know what to do with that information, except to hold it carefully, the way one holds something fragile. Court life, however, was far less gentle than the quiet moments she shared with the Duke. When she was first introduced formally at a gathering of the northern nobility, the whispers began almost immediately. She was the Baron's daughter who had been bought, they said, loud enough for her to hear, soft enough that no one could be blamed for saying it. A woman named Lady Cassandra Vane, who had long hoped to secure the Duke's hand herself, was the sharpest of her critics, offering compliments dressed as insults, and questions meant to expose Alira's lesser breeding. Alira did not rise to the bait. She answered every barbed comment with calm, and every subtle insult with quiet dignity, refusing to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. It cost her more than anyone around her understood. Long nights spent replaying every cruel word, wondering if she would ever belong in a world that had decided, before she even arrived, that she did not. Lady Cassandra did not stop at words. Weeks later, a rumor began circulating that Alira had been seen meeting privately, and improperly, with a young courtier, a complete fabrication, but one dangerous enough to threaten her position and reputation at court. The story spread quickly, as such stories do, gaining detail and certainty with every retelling. Alira expected the Duke to distance himself. She braced for it, already composing in her mind the quiet acceptance she would need to offer when he asked her to leave. Instead, he called for a gathering of the court himself. Standing before the very nobility who had spent months treating her as an outsider, Alaric spoke with a firmness Alira had never heard from him before. He stated plainly that the rumor was false, that it had been traced to a jealous fabrication, and that anyone who continued to spread it would answer to him directly. He did not simply defend her honor as a formality. He spoke of her patience, her intelligence, and her quiet strength in the face of a court that had never once made her welcome, and he made it clear, in front of everyone, that he would not tolerate her being treated as anything less than what she was. The room was silent when he finished. Lady Cassandra's face had gone pale, and she did not meet anyone's eyes for the rest of the evening. Later that night, Alira found Alaric alone on the terrace, looking out over the dark grounds. She did not know what to say, so she simply stood beside him. "You did not have to do that," she said finally. "I wanted to," he answered. "I should have done it long before tonight." They stood together in silence for a while, before he spoke again, more quietly this time. "I have been thinking about how this began," he said. "I paid for you once, without meaning to, through the carelessness of my steward. I paid again to try to undo that wrong, and still, none of that was ever the reason I wanted you here." He turned to face her fully. "I am not asking you to stay because of any debt now, or any arrangement made before either of us had a say in it. I am asking you because I want you here. Because these past months have reminded me what it feels like to want someone's company, not simply require it. Stay at court. Stay as my wife, in truth, and not only in name. Not because you were bought, but because you were chosen, and because I hope, in time, you might choose this life for yourself as well." Alira felt something in her chest loosen, a tension she had carried since the day the letter first arrived at her family's door. She thought of her father's silence, her mother's tears, the carriage ride into the unknown. She thought of the man who had refused to let her arrival be a transaction, who had paid twice and asked nothing, who had stood before an entire court to defend a woman the world had told him he merely owned. "I already have," she said quietly. "I think I have for some time now." He reached for her hand, and for the first time since she had arrived at Thornwick, she did not feel like a stranger standing at the edge of someone else's life. She felt, instead, like she had finally found her place within it. In the months that followed, the whispers at court did not vanish entirely, but they lost their power. Alira came to be known, not as the woman who had been sold, but as the Duchess, who had earned her place through patience and quiet strength, standing beside a man who had chosen her, fully and freely, long before either of them had been ready to say so aloud. And on quiet evenings, when the halls of Thornwick grew still and the fires burned low, Alira would sometimes think back to that gray morning, when a letter arrived, and her future seemed decided without her. She understood now that it had not been the ending of her story at all. It had only been the beginning, waiting for her to choose, at last, what came next.